Hello and welcome to another episode of Cheers with the News. I'm Jack,
I'm Eli.
and we got a great episode planned. It is the last episode of the season. Whoa,
I know
whoa,
it's
it's
crazy.
big. It's a big deal.
It is a big deal. We have a lot of new changes coming for season 3. We'll be implementing a lot more things potentially, or we might be lazy and just not do any of those things at all.
Right,
But it'll be fun either way.
exactly. So before we bring our guest on, I'd like to ask you: would you like to have a pet ostrich?
I think it'd be cool. I mean, I heard about this guy who one time rode the back of an ostrich. Like he grew up in like Zambia, I think, and like that was like a thing, like when you were kids, because you were small enough to kind of sit on the back and you would like ride the ostrich, and then as you grew up, you no longer could ride the ostrich because you were too big for that.
Interesting. Well, I don't know much about this story, but apparently there was an ostrich loose in St. Charles,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and it's been returned to its owner. So either they have like an ostrich farm or just a pet ostrich, which is
That's
cool
so
either way.
weird.
But I don't
How,
know.
you
If you
have to
see an ostrich, be careful.
be on the lookout. I mean, you have to wonder like, how did that ostrich get to some random person's backyard? Because they're not native not only to this continent, but like to the entire Western Hemisphere. Like I think they're mostly in like Africa and Europe, but like
So it's animal cruelty.
like you have to think like this was either like illegal or just like incredibly weird in terms of how the transaction went down. And I think yeah, like that's it's definitely sketchy and potentially cruelty.
Hmm.
I don't know. What do you think?
Interesting. That's a good take. No, I don't know. I want to have a pet ostrich if possible. I think that would be really cool. So I'm jealous,
Sure,
but
sure.
I don't know much about the situation over there, so I couldn't really tell you.
Yeah.
Thought it was cool.
All right. Well, let's introduce our guest. We have a great guest. I think so, at least. Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yes, hello. My name is Macey Goldstein. I am a Jews with the News enthusiast, and less notably, I'm Eli's brother. And it's good to be here.
Thank you so much for taking the time from college to come and join us.
Please.
We have a really great episode. This one's going to be lighter than the past. We did a really big, pretty deep episode yesterday or last week. So
Yesterday.
not yesterday, last week. So I think we we want to kind of make this a little more light. Not that it won't be deep, might not be deep, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so let's start off with the first thing, which is we have all just seen and loved. I mean, I don't want to speak for all of us, but I think loved um, the new Pixar movie Soul. So I just want to start off with everyone's thoughts on the movie.
Well, this is a big spoiler alert moment for any viewers
Yes.
who get to see the film, right?
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Macey.
Good call. We could have been in deep trouble there.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I'll start off with my thoughts, which is I thought, I think as many people have pointed out, like I could not imagine watching that as a child. Um, but I was blown away as like a young adult person. I thought that like animation was incredible. Um, I thought all the characters were well developed, and I thought that it made a really incredibly, I don't know, profound point. And I think we'll discuss kind of what that point was and whether or not I believe it or, take that with a grain of salt and whatever. It was really beautiful to watch.
Yeah, I definitely think that it was a well-developed movie. I think the production. I'm glad we got it, you know, now as opposed to them waiting to like release in theaters because I enjoyed watching it. So like it was very. I don't know. I thought it was very well developed. I thought all the characters had a purpose, which there have been some Pixar movies where I feel like they just put characters just to put characters. So I think in recent times, this is one of Pixar's like better movies that they've made. Like recently, I feel like they've been on a slow decline, but I thought this, stands out as like one of the better ones. I thought, yeah, I do agree that this is not a children's movie. Like it looks like a children's movie because of like it's animated and it's Pixar, but I don't think it was ever intended to be for children. They just market it to children because that's probably how they make more money.
I think it, having said that, I think a child would enjoy the movie. I don't
I'm
think
sure they would enjoy it, but they wouldn't
the
understand.
sadness that it evokes as a child. So you just see the pretty colors and the like beautiful animation and the cat. Ha ha ha.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about the animation for a second because it was so amazing, right? Like talk about like first in The Great Before, right? Just the creativity involved, right? And visually, like the Jerrys and the Terrys, and that was all, and how they like actually created the souls, right? That was all beautiful. And then in the Earth, I mean, it just shows how much animation has grown over the past 30 years because they were able to make them look animated while also real, and like the background looked fully realistic, and yet somehow they managed to make it work so that like a fully realistic building like like behind a cartoon person like didn't look weird at all. And I'm not sure what they did to make that happen, but it was like astounding to me. And then I think also in terms of the content, I think it was very deep, like you said. I mean, I agree. I don't know if a child would fully comprehend necessarily all of the themes that were going on, but I think it was a lovely film that I think a child could see themselves enjoying. I think particularly, I think that I found myself enjoying more the time when they were on Earth rather than when they were in The Great Before, which was not what I expected at all. I expected myself to just like fall in love with what was going on in The Great Before. And I think, not to say that I didn't enjoy that part of the story, but I was kind of impressed in that way. So yeah, I think we're going to kind of dive into maybe a more deep discussion about what was going on in that story, which is, what do you think 22's final badge was? What do you think her spark, or their spark was? Because it kind of tries to show you in the movie, but it doesn't outright say. And so I've had conversations, and I feel like everyone has a slightly different take on kind of a general concept. So I'm just a little curious to hear.
I reject the premise that 22 has some like passion in life that they discovered on Earth, or some, purpose that they found when they existed on Earth or the Great Before. Because I think that's what the whole final act was about. I think Joe getting pulled aside and being told, hey, like, your spark is not the piano, your spark is not jazz, your spark is not music. Those are things that are important to you in the life that you've lived. And maybe that music was his spark, but it seemed to me, what makes you want to live, what like brings you into a place of engaging with the world, into a place of living. And so I think for 22, it was, for me, the moment that I think it looked like it clicked was catching the twirly leaf, and just that moment, whatever it was a spark. And I think that inspired an immense and like very powerful desire to live and desire to exist. And you can see that in their actions after that point. And I feel like, I think that is the spark. It's that moment, it's that experience. And I think that for most people, most souls, they find that, doing some kind of simulation in the Great Before, but 22 needed the full immersive experience to really get that, not will to live, but like excitement to live.
Yeah, I think you hit that spot on. I think that was definitely like kind of like the resolution of like that part of the like plot, is that 22 went down there. If you notice, like she kept collecting like bits and bobs from like other people doing what they like. For example, like the lollipops at the barbershop and the bagel, so on and so forth. And it's just that the movie was showing that 22 was gradually getting a place closer to like recognizing like what it is to like live life and to like enjoy that and do something you enjoy. And I agree that that moment where he catches the whatever it's called, the leaf or whatever, is definitely like when that like would have filled out, like her spark per se would have like been completed.
Yeah, I think generally I agree. I'm going to try to be a little more specific and try to actually maybe provide a theory as to what went through the 22's mind when they kind of decided that was the moment they want to live life. And I think this is kind of an overarching theme across Pixar, but I feel like was especially prevalent in Soul, which is the idea of generosity and of memories. I think that throughout the entire day, right, what Soul 22 loved was they loved interacting with people, and they loved watching those people experience joy. So I think they got that final merit badge by in that final moment when that leaf thingy
Leaf.
twirled down. Thank you. Because I think that was a moment when they kind of fit everything together. They kind of realized like the person at the hair salon and the Joe's mom at the dress shop, the tailor shop, right? Those weren't people that had a career passion, right? The hair person wanted to become a chef, I think he said. And
Was it a chef or was it
That, yeah.
a
it was a
vet?
vet.
Yeah.
Thank you. And the I think the mom said like she had planned on being something else, and so I think it was that moment when Soul 22 kind of had that moment of, oh, I can have just as much joy out of life without having all this pressure of what is the one thing I'm destined to do. But yeah, I think in general.
And to your point, like it's the first time in that day that they were experiencing like what they collected wasn't from someone else. It was for themselves. And I feel like we've all had a moment. It was very relatable to me to watch a person or a being or an entity sit on a stoop and watch the leaves fall down and the sun reflecting out. Like beautiful scene that they animated. And I thought, yeah, that is something that would make me excited to be here because I feel like that's something we've all done before.
Yeah. So now we're going to get a little into the theories behind what's been going on. There's been a lot of speculation.
I mean, before, like, there's countless of like different like hidden like Easter eggs and like different like quotes that they say that you could like make a whole theory off of. Like, I feel like this movie, in Pixar's terms, is like the whole like hoorah. It's like it's just like everything is out there, and like you could think like whatever you want, and like there's a lot of stuff that could happen after this or whatever. It's theory filled. That's what I'm trying to say.
Well, this movie basically tries to answer the question, what is the meaning of life? I mean, it does it in a little more unique and a little more way, and in a really good way too. But yeah, it's a very big concept film with a lot of different theories, a lot of different takes on it. With that said, though, there's a lot of speculation as to who Soul 22 becomes when they reach Earth. There's actually a YouTube video that went viral who kind of proposed a couple of theories, and we want to talk about this because I, for one at least, we're very excited to hear and read some of these theories, and actually have a new one of my own. So we'll start by just giving kind of a basic who is 22 as a character, and then we can agree and disagree on some of this stuff. But so there are a few things that they are. So one is kind of cynical, right? We see throughout the whole movie that they kind of have a cynical outlook on life. They on their badge it says, I think, 4 other qualities, which are cynical, extroverted, moody, and punctual, and then plus that spark.
I think it's funny that they gave them punctual because they were, potentially thousands of years late to
Right.
the game.
Yeah. Well, I think that's sweet. Like,
Yeah.
no, they weren't late. They were right on time when they needed to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, time doesn't really work in the Great Before, which
That's
Oh
is,
yeah, for sure.
yeah.
so like,
Uh,
They number the souls, so there's some kind of system.
um, okay, yeah, but so let's kind of talk about who we think Soul 22 might be, whether or not we agree or disagree. And Jack, why don't we start with you?
oh boy. Okay. So at the end of the movie, like when 22 is jumping down to Earth, it does appear that 22 is jumping into the Eastern Hemisphere, probably Asia. I don't know like how much like that actually counts, because like everybody, that would mean that like only that half of the world could have like births at that time, and the other half of the world couldn't. But it's also kind of confusing because like time doesn't really work. So like when 22 jumps into into the universe, or into Earth, 22 could be going into a present, like around the time where Joe lived, or it could be any time in the future or any time in the past, because it's just like 22 just exists when 22 exists. So it's kind of hard to say exactly who 22 could be, because there's so many options depending on like what you believe, like from what the information they've given us. It's also implying that the Pixar theory is correct, where all the Pixars exist on one timeline. All the Pixar movies exist on one timeline, so they're all intertwined, which I like to believe. I think that's interesting. But so I'll do the one that they say like is in the Eastern Hemisphere. And there's this movie coming out in 2022. It's called Turning Red, I believe, where it's about this girl who turns into a red panda occasionally. I don't know much about it. It seems interesting, but I do know that the red pandas like live in that region where it looked like 22 was jumping in, and she did appear to be the age at around, like, if it is her jumping into the present, it appears like that could take around the same time. So I don't know much about her as a character because the movie hasn't come out yet. I feel like Pixar does a really good job of like setting things up for future installments, and this could be one of their ways of like setting that up and creating like intrigue for this movie. So that's a thought.
Yeah.
Before I, give my take, I do want to like say something. I know, actually, I didn't know. I might have known, but you said that cynical is one of the, personality traits on 22's badge. I Had I not known that, I would have said that the cynicism that they experienced in the Great Before would probably evaporate to some extent. Maybe not go away completely, but their experiences with Joe, they seem to go into their life with a lot of optimism and a lot of, I don't know. I feel like they're a wise soul entering the world without all of the cynicism that they once had.
I would offer, and this doesn't necessarily counter that observation, but at the end of the movie, when 22 is about to jump into the universe, they still are hesitant. Like it takes Joe offering to go with 22, and that could just be fear. It could also be a little like hesitation of like there's a reason why I haven't been to Earth for
Yeah.
all of time, and so I
That
think
falls more under self-doubt than it does cynicism. But yes, I see your point that it could be any number of factors that are causing that hesitance. Anyway, all I was going to say was one of the characters proposed was Colette from Ratatouille. And I thought that she erred on the side of too cynical for my taste, to be 22. I thought that I love Colette and all of the characters in Ratatouille, but she, until she met Linguini and Remy, was a pretty harsh, judging person. And I think that, at least I like to think, that when 22 got down there, they were just, ready to start living.
Yeah. I have a new theory I'd like to hear your thoughts on this, which is
Hit
what
me.
if I think it's new. I don't think they talked about this. I was thinking about Jessie from Toy Story.
A toy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, because I think we've already established anything with a soul, right? They go into, and I feel like in order for all the toys to have that, spark of life, I feel like that is what would be the
I agree
soul
with
in
you
the Pixar
completely.
universe.
I
You agree
think
with Jessie? Or-
I don't know about Jesse. I just
Oh,
think
okay.
any living thing in the Pixar universe now we have to assume was once a soul.
Okay.
Anything. Okay. Yeah. Anything that could like feel any emotions. I feel like.
Right. And we see so many of them.
Mhm.
Right.
So my theory, I think it's Jessie. I think she is pretty cynical, at least in the beginning, right? I think she has, like when we meet her in Toy Story 2, she's very hesitant to leave, right? She has a very negative, presumption of, being a toy as opposed to being a collector's, item. I think she, again, early on,
They are the rootinest tootinest gang.
they are the rootinest tootinest gang. She's very extroverted. I mean, Bullseye and Jessie are like just the combo. And she loves people. By the end of the fourth movie, when it kind of wraps everything up, I feel like that's kind of how I see Soul 22 at their best, which is someone who just loves life, who is a little who's very critical of the world, but also ready to be in it and excited to be in it. And so I think Jesse's a great.
I can't handle that theory. I can't handle that theory only because it means that 22 had to struggle for an unknowable amount of time, become a lost soul, become rescued, finally get all the courage to come down to Earth, to be dropped in a toy, only to be discarded and have a Sarah McLachlan song play. And it takes another like 2 years for them to find family again. I cannot. Too much pain for
Just
one.
emotionally, you don't buy
Yeah.
it?
I don't think. I also don't think that would be the exact reason that Pixar wouldn't do it though, because that would just be too much pain for one character.
Now,
Too much.
here's based on that. Here's a potentially darker theory.
Okay.
What if 22 didn't go to Jesse's? I don't know if we call toys bodies, but whatever. But was actually
Essence.
Al from Al's Toy Barn. Now, Al worked at a toy shop, so he like collected things for his personal collection, but also worked to buy things that like spark joy in children, right? Like maybe it started from a pure place, and he became a lost soul as he became obsessed with this collection that we see 22 become obsessed with. I know it's a lot darker than Jesse just not having love for 2 years, but it seems like a plausible, if a bit sad, answer.
Definitely.
I do think it's important to keep in mind that it doesn't have to be. Obviously, Tina Fey voices 22.
Oh yeah.
So that's like a female voice, but I don't think that the soul necessarily has to be female.
Yeah, I've been trying to refer to 22
Right.
with non-gendered pronouns only because I agree with you completely. I don't think we know what they are or like who they are.
I know. I doubt Pixar will ever answer that question as who does Soul 22 become. And yet, I think this is a great character building discussion.
I do find the Wally. I won't talk about it that often, but I find the Wally one very intriguing.
Wally.
Kind of the reason as to why you guys like find like the toy one kind of thing, because like the fact that Wally, obviously, I feel like Wally had a soul, like before even watching Soul, like in the sense that I feel like Wally, obviously he's feeling things and he's a lovable robot, but I feel like it's kind of hard to say that he had a soul. Maybe he was just programmed that way to like act like that. But I find like I'd like to think that 22 is Wally, so I'm gonna think that
Wally had a soul, and 22 definitely could have been Wally.
I think Soul or Ellie and Wally were both just so nice thoughts.
And you mean
Ellie from Up? Ellie from Up, yeah. Mr.
Now,
Fredrickson's wife.
here's something I just want to get your guys' takes on this because I always think it's interesting to ask people. We're talking Pixar theory, which means we think that the Cars universe, cars have souls, cars,
Oh,
you know. Now, my
Mm.
question to everyone is always, what are the cars? If they exist in the same timeline as us, they clearly exist in a post-human, post-car world. So are they humans who are operating, like biologically advanced, operating car suits? Are they literal evolutions of humans? Like, what are those eyes? What's
so
going on
I
underneath the hood?
think I think in my I did a lot of like video watching and research about the Pixar theory like 11 years ago. So like
Yes.
it's been a long time since I've like covered this topic, but if I'm not mistaken, the Cars movie is supposed to take place once the humans have left on like the giant spaceship in Wally, and they leave because like the machines have like there's no life and machines have kind of taken over. So I think like the B&L company that like sponsors like that spaceship and like it appears like everywhere is this big like basically kind of like Amazon where they just do everything, like control everything. That they kind of create like this machine that can kind of like think on its own and have this like own universe. I think that's what it was. Could be wrong, but that's what I'll go with. So I think that they're just highly advanced machines.
Here is what I'll say, which is, so the Pixar theory, as far as I'm aware, says that what keeps things like toys and robots and cars um, in a state of having a soul, in a state of living, is the idea of memories. Right, because we see what's the guy from Inside Out when they're forgotten, when the imaginary friend is
Yeah,
forgotten, he disappears. And Coco, once you're forgotten, you kind of, right, and so there has to be some sort of memory from it feels like a human, right? Like it feels like having the memory of happiness remembering the imaginary friend doesn't really matter. What matters is the human remembering the imaginary friend. So I feel like there has to be a human to remember the cars, or the cars to remember the humans, or something like that. And the only way that is imaginable for me is that there was some sort of weird evolution. I think the other thing that points to that is they have such a weirdly specific nostalgia for like the 1960s interstate, like or like highway system, that feels like it was talking about the what was going on in human times. Although maybe that just they replicated that once everyone left.
Okay.
That's my
Here's
theory.
here's all I'll say. I don't think that the Cars universe can exist at the same time as Wally or as like the humans that we see that look like contemporary humans, because if B&L's all on their ships and we see cars racing through Monaco, like with the green grass growing, like some Wally-esque robot would have reported that at some point, right? Like I know that
true.
it took a lot to get the B&L ships to come back, but there's a lot of signs of life in that case, and we can't coexist because like Joe would have like mentioned the sentient cars that run the Eastern Hemisphere or like whatever it is. So my theory is, and this is from YouTube as well. Um, so all the humans got, there was a big thing that happened, possibly nuclear, right? You all had to take cover. So some people go in their cars and they trick out the cars, right? Now the cars, have motion sensors and light sensors, and you kind of like lock in to control the cars. And to protect yourself from radiation, you lock yourself into like a little tube, and then it's just your brain hooked up to the car. That's where it starts. And then since we don't know how cars procreate, we just keep seeing iterations of that, and they're mimicking human culture to try to remember their past because we only see things that have already happened. We saw the interstate system take over the small town highways. We saw British spy movies. Like they're just emulating human culture. So I think that is something that kind of blew my mind, which is that cars might be people.
That's a very interesting take. I think, yeah, the cars concept in terms of the Pixar universe definitely is an odd one.
Because
That's
what are
just
the
interesting.
odds that they independently develop a Jesus character? Because there's a Pope. So not only do they develop Jesus as like a central character, but they develop organized religion in the exact same way. I
This
don't
is
know.
true.
True. Macy, in your theory, do you think that like the person who strapped themselves into that car and like is like the Pope car is actually the Pope or somebody just wanting power?
So I don't know. Maybe the Vatican was saved and they all went into their little cars, or maybe it's just a bunch of people playing, like, playing at whatever
up.
life could be in that weird altered state.
Now,
No,
here's something that
it makes sense why then the I don't remember her name, but the Lightning McQueen's love interest would get a
Howie?
decal on her back, because that doesn't make sense. If you're a car, you're not procreating with a tailpipe. But if
Mhm.
you're a human in a car suit, and you're like, oh, I know what that means.
Uh, I here's something slight transition. Here's something
Yeah.
else that's interesting about cars, which is the military. The military car is very militant, right?
He has
They're very
flashbacks.
he has,
Like
yeah,
canonically, he has flashbacks.
and the peace car, right? The hippie van also has those same like aesthetic, right? And so if you are that peace van, right, like how would you know to have that same aesthetic, that same like vibe? And so I feel like it can only happen either if you had a really specific soul that said this is your personality, or much more common, because we now know how souls work, which is there has to be, I feel like, some sort of human connection.
So this is a smaller point, but how do you manufacture like peace signs in the Cars universe? No one has hands. Like the best you can get is a forklift.
That is true.
I don't
That's good
know.
enough though. Like that can be like fingers. So like I think it could
I
work.
feel like the forklift people are low-key driving society, and everyone else is like just waiting for them to move things forward.
Most
Listen,
definitely.
they manufacture through the power of memory, and I feel like in the Pixar universe, that's all that needs to.
That's fair. I think overanalyzing the logistics will get me nowhere. Fair
But it's fun.
um,
Well, I think on that we had other stuff planned, but that conversation went on for a good while, which is nice. I
we
enjoyed
like
it.
that, yeah.
But that's about our time for this episode. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you both for having me.
All right, have a good one.